In this video, we're going to learn how to enable a social sign-on option for Salesforce users to log in. We will use Google as a social sign-on option for our Salesforce users to log in. So this is how it's going to appear after we completed our implementation. So you will just start seeing an option for the user, a button on the login page for the users to just sign in to Salesforce by, through their existing Google credentials. So this will not just help users to log in into Salesforce, it will also create a user record in the Salesforce so that manually we don't have to create users in Salesforce. So setting up users automatically is also part of this implementation. So let's get into the action. So basically this involves 3 or 4 steps, max 4 steps. So we will just start with setting up uh, an authorization app in or an OAuth 2.0 client app back in Google, so that whenever the user clicks on the button login with Google, Google will authenticate the user, and then it will return back the access token back to the Salesforce, saying that yes, the user that has signed in just now is a genuine or a valid user. You can let the user to access Salesforce. So basically, right, this social sign-on is basically to enable the authentication to offloading this authentication part, to a third-party provider, right? In this case, Google acts as a third-party provider, which will do the authentication on behalf of Salesforce and then send the Salesforce, an acknowledgement that, hey, you know what, I did authenticate the user. The user is genuine, so just let the user access Salesforce application. This is basically what is happening in this authentication. So let's head on to our Google console and then set up a client app for authentication. Yeah. So so this is the URL console.cloud.google.com. So what I'll do is I'll just first sign into the console. So I'm going to use Cognito window. Let me just go to and then see. Yes. So let me just log into this platform. So all you need to do is you just need to use your email address, Google account to just sign in. Then you'll be taken to the console where you just start creating an application, OAuth client app, 2.0 client app. All right, I've just signed in. This is my console, this is my Google console. What I have to do is I just have to go to the menu and then let me look for API and services, under which you will find an option called credential. Just click on it. You will be taken to a place where you can just create OAuth client application. So this is where we're gonna create an OAuth client app. So if it is the first time that you are going to create OAuth client app, then you have to create OAuth consent screen. And also, if it is the first time, you have to create a project as well. So let's first create a project, and then we can come back create the client app. Yeah. So uh, so we can just start from here as well. So we can just click on create credentials or the client ID. Yes, it says that you need to create a consent screen first. Let me do that first. Yeah, I'm going to choose external. I'm going to choose create. So I'm going to give a name to my app name. So I'll just say as Salesforce Google SSO. Yeah. So I'll have an email setup. Okay, I can just map my email. It is possible for you to configure domain that are authorized to log in, etc., etc. You can just mention the developer contact email address and then click on save and continue. Once you are done with that, you'll be taken to the scope screen. So this way, you can able to configure the scope. So basically what happens is as soon as the user gets authenticated, the Google has to send some information back to Salesforce, right? Saying that the user is legit and the user can, get into Salesforce application, isn't it? So this is this is where the scope is defined, so that based on the scope, the information gets passed on from Google to Salesforce. So I'm going to enable all OpenID, user profile and whatever information publicly available, in your Google account. I just wanted to send that information back to the Salesforce, so that this will help me to create, users in Salesforce. So I will just click on update. Yeah, now I have the sense scopes as well. So it's time for me to just, save and continue. Okay, so whatever we are currently doing, right? This is just a the draft or a test version. So while you are setting this up, setting this authentication provider, setting this integration, so you can set some test users and then have the test users, you can use the test users and then test the integration. So for that purpose, you can just use the screen and then add some test users. So if you really want to test it before, which is what is recommended, you have some test users. Basically, when I say test users, I meant some Google accounts, some Google accounts which you can use it for testing. And once you are done with the testing, and if you're happy with the outcome, then you can just publish this OAuth application. So for now, I'll just going to skip the step, but it is possible for you to add some test users as well. So I'll click on save and continue. So this will ensure that the entire the auth consent screen is set up. So it's now time for me to go ahead and then edit the app and then publish the app. So let me just publish the app. So before I do that, let me just cross check if we have everything set up fine. So we have the publishing status. Let's publish the app. OAuth user cap, test users, all good. So let's publish the app. Yeah, let's do that. Perfect. So now the OAuth consent screen, has just been created, right? So again, if you are using this for the very first time, if you are creating the credentials for the very first time, then you really require to, set this consent screen. Okay, otherwise you are good to go. So now let's go back and then create our OAuth client app. Yeah, so let's do that. Yes, I'm in the credentials. Let me click on credit credentials and then let's click on OAuth client ID. So I have to choose the application type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the application type as web application. I'm going to give a name. So this is my Salesforce Google OAuth client app. Yeah. Perfect. And we need to just, set the authorized redirect URLs. What does it mean? So as I said, right, we're going to offload authentication part to Google, isn't it? So as soon as Google authenticates a user, after the user enters username and password, the email account and password. So once Google authorized or authenticates the user, what should Google do? It should send the data, back to, or it should send information back to Salesforce so that Salesforce can let the user log in, right? So this is where the authorized redirect URL come into the play. So I need to give a URL. So to be updated.com. Okay, so for now, let's have it this way. Okay, once we configure certain stuff back in Salesforce, we can come back and then update this authorized redirect URL again. So this URL is important so that the handshake can happen between Google and Salesforce. Yeah, so let's click on create. So this will create a client ID and secret for me. So let's wait for this to get created. You can just say this, right? You need to ensure that this is this is stored somewhere safe, and until you configure this client ID and client secret back in Salesforce. Okay, so I'll copy this and I can just have this stored in a notepad for now. Perfect. So this has just been copied in a notepad. Now we can just start using this. Okay, in our org. So that's it from our configuration standpoint and Google end. So let's go back to our org. So what we have to do is we just have to create an authentication provider. As the name indicates, we are going to offload the authentication part, right, uh, to a third party provider, right, which is Google in our case. So let's head back to our setup. Let's go and then find the authentication providers option, and let's create a new authentication provider. So let's choose one of the authentication providers from the existing list. So I'll choose Google So, Salesforce has done a lot of work on behalf of me already. As you can just see, as soon as I just choose the provider type, Salesforce gives me, a lot of endpoint URLs, right? So this is how the handshake happens. So the moment you click on login with Salesforce, a call from Salesforce is made to this, authorization endpoint URL. All these things, will happen behind the scenes. So now let's focus on what is needed for us to complete this configuration. Yeah, so I'm gonna go and then say this is Google. Okay, this is where whatever we did from on the Google end, right, the client ID and the consumer secret. Let's copy the client ID and then put it back in our authentication provider. Yeah, let's copy the consumer secret. Let's put that back in Salesforce. Okay, let's leave the rest. Okay, and I'm going to leave this default scope empty, or you can also just say OpenID. Um, you remember the on the OAuth consent screen, we did enable few scopes, right? So basically, the information that Salesforce needs to pass it on, to Salesforce. So I'm just saying OpenID. I can just say email, and I can just say user, etc. Okay, or I can just leave it blank as well. So either way it is fine. Okay, so once this is done, I want also to auto create a user, isn't it? So for that purpose, I'll be using an Apex class. Okay, so again, Salesforce is going to help you here. Salesforce says that it can create an Apex class with all the necessary methods in it. So all you have to do is you have to go and then update the particular Apex class once authentication provider setup is completed. So I'm going to make use of that option. I'll just say automatically create an handler for me. Okay, and I want to ensure that Apex class runs in a particular user context. Okay, so I'll just choose John Doe. Okay, is the user. Okay, under his context, the Apex class will run. Perfect. So I can just choose an icon as well because I want to give that Google logo, okay, to appear. So this is the icon that I wanted to show up on the login page. Done. So let's go back here. Let's put the icon. Yeah, perfect. Now let's click on save. That's it. Our authentication provider is completed, and this is where I get the callback URL. Just copy this callback URL. So I'll copy this one and then go back to Google. Okay, and let me edit this. Yeah, and remember this is where we this is the placeholder where as I said earlier, as soon as the authentication is completed, so Google will send the information back to our Salesforce org, and this is the endpoint, and this is the URL to which we are telling Google to send the information back to Salesforce. That's it. Save this. So I think we are pretty much done. All we need to do is we need to test this, right? So we did complete the Google setup. We did complete the authentication provider, isn't it? The next step is we need to bring this sign in option, right, on the login page, correct? Salesforce login page. So let's do that, and then we can just run a test. So before we do that, if you want to test whether this integration works fine or not, you can use this test only initialization URL. You can just copy this URL, yeah, and then you can go back and then um, have this entered in the URL, and then it will just when you hit enter, it will take you to okay. Looks like the authorization there is some error in the authorization. We can just fix this, but this is how you can test this before you actually enable this to the user. We can just fix this, if we can fix this option. Okay, and then we can come back and then test this again. Yeah, I think I just made a mistake when I copy the consumer key. So if I go back to our client app, let's just check on this download OAuth client. You can just see this is the client ID that starts with 20, but back in Salesforce, I think I just made it wrong. So let me just edit this. So let me go back to our OAuth client app, copy this, come back, remove the existing key, put this back. Perfect. Let's click on save. And now let's cross check whether this is working, integration is working or not. So for that purpose, I'll be using test only initialization URL. I'll go back to this incognito window. Okay, let me just hit enter and see what happens. Okay, now I'm just taken to this screen, right, where I can just choose an account, you know, a Gmail account, isn't it? So that I can just log in and then check. So I'm not going to do this now, but as soon as I just see this particular page, it means that Salesforce is able to communicate to, Google, right? There is one last step that we need to do. Once we are done with it, we're all good to go. The last thing is we decided to auto setup or auto create user, remember? So let's complete that and then we can come back and then test this. Yeah, let's do that now. All right, let's go back now. And this is the Apex class that was auto created. So let's click here. And as I said earlier, Salesforce is helping us right here. Salesforce has just built or auto-generated this Apex controller or Apex handler for us. So all we have to do is we just have to make tweaks in this existing code so that we can able to accomplish, we can able to accomplish auto create user. Yeah. So as you can just see, right, there are three important functions: can create user, and update user. So whenever there is a request for creating a new user, right, when Salesforce finds that there is that is that the user does not exist, then it will create, it will make a call to this create user, and this particular code will help you to decide based whether you want to create a new user or not. Yeah, you may have some business process or you may have business validations in place that you might want to check before you just send a signal, hey, you can create a new user when somebody logs in through Google or not, right? So you can just make use of this particular method for that. So in our case, I just wanted to right away create a user. Okay, and you have two. Let me just remove this as well. Okay, yeah, I can use this particular code to to create a user. So in this case, it's straightforward. I'm gonna try to create a user of type Salesforce standard user. Okay, so this is the user that I want to create. And when I create, I want to give the username. So what I'm going to do is, and this is the data, whatever Google is going to send you, whatever data that Google is going to send you, that information is going to, that available, is going to be available inside this data, you know, inside this data. So what I'm going to do is I don't want to access this data username directly. What I want to do is I want to extract the username of the user, okay, from the email. Okay, let's see how we can do that. All right, I'm going to write a simple substring. Use string.substring. So what I'm doing is I'm going to read the email address, the Google email, email, the Gmail, and then I'm going to just extract the content, okay, from the start till it finds this at the rate symbol. Okay, fairly simple, isn't it? So this is the username that I wanted to use, and I'm going to say this is my org. I'll just say creative panda .com. That's the username that I wanted to have. And what else? So I'll just copy this. I will go back and then use it in the I think that should be fine. Yeah, so this is good. And the email address, I can change the email address as well. Okay, let me just go with that. Yeah, so that's it. Let me just first save and then see whether this works or not. Okay, I made a small tweak, right? I just removed the unwanted code and then I changed the username. Instead of just directly accessing the username from the information coming from the Google, I just used data.email, the email address, and then extracted the username. That's it. Okay. Now it's time for us to test it. So before I do it, let's go to the my domain. Okay, and this is where you can just make some small tweaks and then bring the login option back to the home page. Let's go and then do that. All right, right in this my domain, you have this section called authentication configuration. Click on edit, and you can find different options right here, right? So this is the authentication provider that we just created. So enable this. Okay, this is the default login form, and this is our Google. So I can just, of course, you can make some further tweaks. You can change the background color, put an image on the right frame URL. You can do all such things. So right now, I'm just going to go with the default option. Let's click on save. Okay, perfect. Now, if I copy this, and then if I go to this incognito mode and then enter this URL, I should be taken to the login page with an option to log in as Google. So now let's click on Google and then see, log in with Google, and it will take me to the page where I can just enter my Google account. Okay, and then let's see how this works. As you can see, as soon as I just enter hit the login with Google button, I'm just taken to account.google.com. See where I can just enter my Google account and then just see how this works. All right, it did not work. It says we cannot log in because of, there is some authentication error. But how do I debug this problem, right? It just showed me a generic error message, isn't it? And this is where, you can just focus on the URL. Yeah. So what happens is Salesforce, what happens is Salesforce will show the generic page, but the URL is the one that carries all the error information. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this, go back to my um, notepad, and let's just put this right here. And this is where you can just see the exact error. You can just see the error code, registration handler error, and attempt to dereference a null object. Looks like something is wrong, the information that is passed on to the handler code, okay, isn't, as missing some information. Okay, that may be the reason for this. So let's go ahead and then debug this problem, okay, in the next video, and then see how we can able to figure out the problem and then solve it so that Salesforce can auto create a user for us.